My dog, Thunder, is an English bulldog who's an absolute marshmallow. He loves attention and has never gotten like this. He's 1 year old, but he's pretty big. I have 2 other dogs, however, they couldn't do anything even if they tried, since they are pugs and are very, very small. Anyways, onto the story. I was 14 years old, and I woke up earlier than anyone in the house. I woke up to rustling downstairs. I figured it was my dogs, or my sister. My sister usually goes down to get food early in the morning. I looked at my clock. It was 7:18 a.m. I was hungry, so I opened my door and started walking down the stairs. I stopped halfway down the first flight of stairs when I heard Thunder start barking. I thought it was weird, since Thunder usually didn't bark inside. He barked outside because our neighbors had dogs as well. I continued down the stairs, assuming he was hungry and barking at the kitchen, until I stopped at the landing. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was a fucking man in the middle of the lounge room staring at the crate where our dogs were. By now, Thunder was barking like a rabid dog and throwing himself against the crate. Thunder was large and strong enough to push the crate out. I felt fear wash over me. I carefully crept back up the stairs to my parents' room. I shook my dad awake. He grumbled in response and turned over. I was on the verge of tears now. Dad, wake up, was all I could muster before I broke down in tears. He turned back to me, realizing I was crying. What's wrong? Dad, there's a man downstairs. I choked on my own tears. My dad was up in a flash. He walked downstairs quickly. This is now based off of what my dad told me, since I didn't want to go downstairs in fear of what was happening. He walked downstairs just in time to see Thunder sink his teeth into the man's leg. My dad then told me something that gave me chills. He said the man didn't react at all. My dad tackled the guy, then restrained him until the cops arrived. The cops took the guy away. Turns out that the guy was our neighbor, Liam. Liam had a past with drugs and violence, and he even stole a motorcycle from his brother. We already didn't trust the guy, but now we trust him even less. I was shooken by the experience, and I'm incredibly thankful for my dog. If my dog wasn't there, I most likely wouldn't be telling this story today. A couple of years ago, I was living in a small 2-bedroom apartment with just my small chihuahua and myself. For perspective, I was 22 years old, female. Also, the apartment I lived at was more like a large house that was separated into 3 sections, 3 different apartments, if you will. I only had one neighbor living at these units, and he lived at my left. All the other units were vacant, and I have never felt unsafe living there until this incident. I left for work during the week at around 7:30 a.m. and wouldn't return home until after 5 p.m. I had a definite daily routine. While I was at work, I would leave my dog in the living room so she could lounge on the couch. In this area, there were large sliding glass doors that led to the backyard. When I would take Honey, my dog, out to go potty, there was a large red fence that wrapped around my yard and separated from my neighbors' yards. On my left, right, and behind, besides my one fellow renter, there were a few houses that were occupied behind me. All of the people who lived around me seemed normal and never made a lot of noise or caused any issues. So, one day I went to work as usual. After work, I decided to go visit my friend for a short while. When I was there, I had this feeling that I should wait before going home, so I stayed a little longer than I originally planned. When I got home, it was around 9 p.m. I opened my door and called to Honey as I normally do. She would always run up to me and jump around in excitement. This time, however, I noticed she was in her cage that I kept open and it contained her food and water bowls. I kept calling her name, but she never responded. I started feeling a sense of dread. I walked up to her cage and I immediately realized she was dead. At first, I thought she had died of some sort of natural cause. I then looked up and realized the door to the second bedroom was wide open. I always kept it closed and I knew I hadn't opened it before work. It was at that moment I knew someone had been in my house. My blood ran cold and I ran outside and stood there in shock for a moment. Wanting to hear a familiar voice, I called my dad, who was luckily in town right then, and advised me to call the cops. The cops arrived at the apartment and immediately began saying that the dog probably died of a natural cause. However, I showed her where the back gate was wide open and several other clues someone else had been there. She still didn't believe me and wouldn't do anything else until we did an autopsy on Honey to show she had been killed. Fast forward a week later, we got the autopsy results back. She had died of blunt force trauma to the head, and whoever did it to her had placed her in the cage and covered her up to make her look like she had been sleeping. Our best guess is the person killed her because she wouldn't stop barking. When a detective was sent to the apartment, he asked around to all of my neighbors and no one had seen or heard anything. Also, the guy who lives beside me didn't have anyone break into his apartment, so I feel like whoever did this was looking for me. It had been 2 years since this incident and the culprit was never caught. So, apartment creeper and dog killer was not meet again.